philosophers that discuss this topic have come up with four major theories that make up the backbone of positive psychology. The first and the earliest theory is called hedonism and says that happiness is a matter of raw subjective feeling. It describes a happy life as one that has more feelings of pleasure than feelings of pain. Unfortunately, this explanation leaves a lot of loopholes because it can only describe momentary happiness, not long-term happiness. The next explanation that provides slightly more coverage than hedonism is the desire theory. It says that happiness comes from getting what you want, which on a basic level is wanting pleasure, not pain. By fulfilling any accomplishment, happiness will increase. The third theory is called objective list, and it says that happiness is achieved not by feeling, but instead by a life that follows a list full of personally valuable things that we individually create. Seems reasonable, right? Well, the last theory, called authentic happiness, is used currently to lead the study of happiness and is by far the best theory because it combines all three explanations above. This theory says that there are three keys to happiness: pleasure, engagement, and meaning. Pleasure represents the same thing as hedonism. Engagement and the desire theory mean the same thing. And meaning lines up with the objective list theory. By combining three theories into one, the authentic happiness theory is by far the most flexible and clear explanation. The arguments within positive psychology are as complicated and controversial as any field. Some say that happiness can be achieved from a list filled with goals and improvements, similar to the objective list theory. Those who promote this tactic tend to be writers who are buying into the happiness craze that has blown up in our culture. Author Gretchen Rubin, who wrote the happiness guidebook, The Happiness Project, took a year to change her life by increasing her happiness. In order to do so, she set aside goals for each month. One month consisting of decluttering her house, another focusing on improving her relationship with her husband, next on becoming a better parent, and so on. She wrote the book hoping to inspire others to create their own calendar based on personal improvements, her way of making the world a better place. But she comes from a career of historical writing, not science and research. So while reading it, I found it hard to trust her advice. It doesn't seem realistic to me that her type A personality will be effective with a large portion of people who deal with a much larger struggle in their life than clutter. However, if you look past the over-controlling aspect of Rubin's book and focus on the deeper objective that her arguments present, you will find that her intention is solid. Although this is simply impossible for many people, she's trying to create a template for others to insert their own goals into. She hoped that she would become happier, her mood she wouldn't become contagious, and others would inspire and follow her. I would say she was pretty successful in that sense, after selling more than 1 million copies. Her type A over-controlling schedule may bother me, but it does have some good points. For example, along the way, she has countless epiphanies, which she calls great truths, explaining how the world works and more exclusively how happiness can be achieved. Her first great truth was to be happy, one needs to feel good. One needs to think about feeling good, feeling bad, and feeling right in an atmosphere of growth. This truth is a great way to explain that in order to feel happiness, you must be aware of all of your emotions, the difficult ones, the enjoyable ones, and the everyday blah feelings, or else the pleasurable states will just slip by. This notion of being fully aware of your emotions is popular among many other theorists of happiness. However, they argue the exact opposite of Rubin. These experts believe that the struggles are more necessary than pleasure when searching for happiness. The great Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, psychologist and author of A Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning, believed that happiness could only be achieved if one had a meaningful reason to be happy. So, he so ingeniously said, it is the very pursuit of happiness that thwarts happiness. In the end, his point is that happiness comes from having a purpose in life, not from a shallow or selfish desire to be happy. This, he believed, was what differentiated those who lived and those who did not in the Nazi concentration camps. Of course, many more pressures were put on these prisoners, but those who had the will and reason to live endured for much longer than those who didn't. The survivor describes a situation he handled in the camp, where he helped talk to two suicidal fellow inmates off the ledge. Both men believed that they had nothing left to live for, that life had nothing good left to give them. Frankl was able to change their views on life by getting them to realize that life was still expecting something from them, something in the future was expecting of them. For For one man, it was his son who was alive in another country, and for the other, it was a volume of scientific books that the man had yet to finish. For Frankel, having emotions that were deeper than pleasure, such as love and a drive to pursue, were what brought someone to a place of contentment despite the struggle they had endured throughout their life. Other people have argued this point even further, suggesting that in order to feel, one must first be open to feeling pain. In a long rant against the American lifestyle, author Eric Wilson, in his book Against Happiness, blames our superficial society for their lack of happiness in the entire country as a whole. He believes that the greatest tragedy is to live without tragedy, because pain deepens our connection with real life and to the real emotions that make up this life. In other words, if we avoid bad things, we aren't actually feeling anything true, so we will not be able to know how to be present in our own happiness when it comes. Ultimately, we need to feel pain and appreciate joy. But Wilson goes on to say that the happiness that Americans strive for is essentially fake because it lacks sadness and is driven by material cravings. The entire book overly criticizes human nature, but the idea behind it, the one that needing pain to feel pleasure, is quite understandable. In the end, all of these theories must be combined in order to create a life of happiness. They all involve awareness of both yourself and your surroundings that are important factors in any person, not just someone searching for happiness. As doctor, writer, philosopher, and self-proclaimed happy person, Alexa Fleckenstein told me that there are a few components that define her happiness: being surrounded by people she loves, always doing what she wants, and being strong enough within herself to try and fail repeatedly. I'm neither an expert nor qualified to tell any of you how to become happy. Having that been said, I have come to make my own definition after months of reading and understanding the field of positive psychology, and Dr. Fleckenstein's words closely resemble my own opinion. To me, happiness is not a constant emotion. It is an outlook on life and a personal understanding of how the world works as well as how you yourself work. It is a multiple-step realization, one that requires an internal confidence that allows someone to fail without their world crashing down. Even more important than that, they must be able to choose who they are surrounded with so that the people around them love them and that they love them back. And they must be able to see the world in multiple lights, both the beauty and the evil of human nature, by not taking life for granted. Well, duh, you might say. But this combination is not set in stone, and it also might not be easy to grasp. In the end, we are all subject to create our own definition to make ourselves and our world a little bit happier.